Yesterday morning at 2:41 a.m., General Jodl, the representative of the German High Command, and of Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender.
I am strolling along, just minding my business, humming a song. I'm happy by myself, not a care in the world. This is a life, just me, myself, and I am watching the clouds up in the sky, all but laughing out loud. I'm telling you why I'm living the life, just me, myself, and I used to think that life was cold.
This is Bromsgrove, a small town and district in a county of Worcestershire. If you're from here, you may know of our rich history in being the proud craftsmen who forged the Buckingham Palace gates. In the last 80 years, Bromsgrove has changed quite significantly, but thanks to my nan and some archival footage, I've been able to piece it back together. This story isn't just about the place, it is about my nan, a lady who in her early life lived here during one of history's most pivotal and destructive conflicts. This is Enid's story.
Mum and Dad, or Dad and Mum, was Harry Flowers. He was the third of 6 children. My mother's name was Frances Doris Milton. After leaving school, she was employed by Hicks, who ran a newsagent's on the high street below New Road. A lot of rows went on, particularly at the weekend, because my dad and Mum went out drinking. I recall they came and fetched me out of the house because my dad, at some point while we lived there, he gave my mum a black eye. But with hindsight now, I can understand why my dad got frustrated, but I didn't. Obviously, it's taken me 90 plus years before I worked out the reason that he probably was like he was. They just did not. They should never have got married, but there you are. We'd lived at Blackmore Lane till I was about 2-3 years old, and we moved up to Stony Hill. And I don't actually remember moving, but all I recall is I was laying in bed, and apparently I had at that time, I used to have convulsions. Was in bed for about 5 weeks with rheumatism, which just came on suddenly. It was agony to walk, and obviously I was diagnosed with that problem, which lasted quite a long time. When I went to school, and I said to one of the teachers that I'd had this rheumatism. She said, children do not have rheumatism. And I recall also at school, my uncle used to have a little riddle that he would say. It was something I think it was something to do with Popeye. And it was rather rude at the end. And I recall being at school, and it was the same teacher. And they said, any of the children know any poems? So I came out with this word-perfect poem. And she said, I don't think that was really what we really meant. During that time, when I was living in Birmingham Road, the war was announced. I'd just come back from spending a week at Broadstairs with grannies, and I recall that it must have been a very anxious time because my mum and the other mothers were all waiting for the children to come back, And I think war was announced within a very short time of us coming back. Bromsgrove only being 14 miles from Birmingham, it seemed to just be a natural habitat for us. The Austin was a focal point for the German aeroplane. They were trying very, very hard to bomb it, but because of the way that it was built or covered up, they just could not find the right place. And they did actually drop some bombs about 4 miles away in Burkett as they were making their way back to their aerodrome. And during that, unfortunately, I think there were about 4 people were killed. Bromsgrove had a convalescent home for the American soldiers, which probably was about 43. That it was built specially for the soldiers, because I remember an elderly man who my mum used to live by when she was a child. He was the night watchman at the hospital, and I used to go and sit with him at the hospital while he was on duty. And then we had a couple of men were billeted on with us. They actually worked at Coburn's, that was at that time, they made lemonade in Bromsgrove, and it was opposite, more or less opposite where Ursula is now. And they were billeted with us. And I remember that when the bombers came over Bromsgrove, the one man was immediately, he went under the table. It didn't matter about anybody else, he just went under the table because he'd been bombed out of Coventry, and that was the only thing he could do. It was a natural reaction for him. He just disappeared. A lady came to stay with us. She came, I think, from about the area of Small Heath in Birmingham, somewhere that way. And yes, she came to live with us a little while, but it wasn't a happy association because it was my mum's house, and she was acting as though it was her house. And my mum, being a very strong character, didn't like that. But that was pretty well at the beginning of the war. I went to commercial college in October 1942. And as I left the house, I heard a baby crying, and what it was my mother had agreed to bring up an American soldier and a Bromsgrove girl's baby, whom she actually adopted, and we had the most wonderful 22 years with him. He was fantastic. Unfortunately, he was killed in a motor accident. I remember that we had a party for VE Day. Oh, definitely. A street party. It was probably arranged by the church just down the chapel just down the road. They made sure that the kids enjoyed themselves. By the time post-war came, I was 16, more or less, and I'd actually started work, and I worked to Garrington. I went to Garrington, and I started on the 1st of August 1946. Apparently, although I'd been offered the job, nobody knew I was going. So there wasn't actually a position for me when I actually went there. I had to learn to work at the switchboard because the usual operator was going on holiday. Whenever I went to work, I was pushed up the ladder. Somebody saw something there and put me in the right direction. As a family, we all went to Skegness, Butlins, and this was probably 51. My cousin, they wanted my cousin to go in for it, so I decided that I'd go and join her. Not that I expected to do it. I knew that I hadn't got the body for it, but I did join in there. But I wouldn't do it again. At the reception was my mum and helpers did the reception at the All Saints Parish Hall, and we left around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we went into a little cafe, and the waitress came up. She said, "Oh, congratulations," and I said, "How do you know?" So she said, "You've got confetti in your hair." We didn't actually get to the caravan site where we were going to stop in my boss's caravan until about 10 o'clock at night. However, during the time that Bill was getting the cases into the caravan, he slipped between the step and the actual step into the caravan and disappeared more or less. And of course he was holding the cases, and the cases were kind of by his side at the top of the little steps. It was so amusing. I mean, I still find it hilarious. Other people might not. The marriage took place at All Saints Bromsgrove on Saturday of Miss Enid June Flowers, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. H. Flowers, 100 Birmingham Road, Bromsgrove, and Mr. William Henry Turberfield, son of Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Turberfield, Heath Street, Winson Green. The bride wore a gown of Nottingham lace with train, and a single white rose secured her bouffant veil. She carried red roses, pale lemon roses, and lilies of the valley. A reception at All Saints Hall was attended by 100 guests, and the happy couple left to begin their honeymoon in South Wales.